This is 10 Eyewitness News with Sandra Sully.
Tonight, former WA Premier Brian Burke goes to jail. Was Melbourne's Olympic bid novel? Not so, says the Premier.
No substantial information has come to light that would justify Victoria setting up an inquiry into the allegations.
And they're at it again, Roseanne and Tom Arnold. This time their divorce talk is for real. Good evening. Former West Australian leader Brian Burke is tonight behind bars at the start of a 2-year prison sentence for stealing from his parliamentary expense account. The ex-premier and Australia's former ambassador to Ireland has also received a savage mauling from his trial judge.
Brian Burke and his family would have been hoping against hope as they headed into the court today. But the unthinkable happened. The judge not only sent the former premier to jail, but also told him he had disturbed and damaged public confidence. Brian Burke was roasted by Justice Hammond, who said he had blamed others and had shown no remorse for stealing $17,000 from his parliamentary imprest account between 1984 and 1986. You were the highest elected person in the state. It was a complete breach of trust, said the judge. Wife Sue and 4 of 6 Burke children left the court grim-faced. At their side, barrister John Quigley.
Obviously, it's a distressing circumstance at the moment, and if we could let them move down the street in dignity, it would be very much appreciated. The family have done nothing at all, and if they could just be given a little bit of room to move down the street, it would be very much appreciated.
Brian Burke, the father of WA Inc., was taken to Canning Vale in a prison truck for assessment. The one-time political heavyweight and ambassador to Ireland and the Holy See will be eligible for parole and is expected to serve about 8 months of the 2 years. Doug Cunningham, 10 News.
The New South Wales government may have temporarily avoided a crisis tonight, with both the Police Association and Firefighters Union considering lifting work bans. Both groups are angry over a breakdown in wage negotiations, and late this afternoon the Industrial Relations Commission was called in to mediate. Police had planned a 4-day industrial campaign with officers working only to rule. Firefighters began their industrial action at midday with a series of rolling stoppages. After lengthy talks at the Commission, police agreed to resume normal duties. Firefighters will meet as soon as possible to discuss the situation, but so far tomorrow's work bans remain in place. Prime Minister Paul Keating came under fire today from one of his own, former Minister Peter Staples. The dumped minister says the government needs an injection of youth, and the Labor caucus should keep a tighter rein on the Prime Minister.
Paul Keating's cheating of electoral death in March 1993 gave him more than enough clout to impose his will on caucus for new faces in the ministry and the claim to generational change. 45-year-old Peter Staples was dumped. He now says the claim to generational change was rhetoric, and caucus next time should reassert its authority.
If generational change, as it is very important, should occur, then I think the best process for creating that change should also occur.
But Mr Staples won't be in caucus after the election. He's quitting the seat of Jaga, which he's held for 10 years. He won pre-selection for it from Gareth Evans, blocking his ambitions for the lower house. Deputy Prime Minister Brian Howe today agreed Gareth Evans should now have another go for it. But Mr Staples isn't so keen.
Genuine members of the party, people who've had a long-standing commitment or a genuine commitment to the party, be the ones who'll make that decision and nobody else.
But Mr Staples is in firm agreement with his left faction leader, the Deputy Prime Minister Brian Howe, for blowing the whistle on further sales of government assets. Mr Howe went further out on a limb, questioning Mr Keating's agenda to sell airports.
Public interest grounds may dictate that privatisation is not an option.
And he nominates Adelaide, Hobart and Darwin as demanding special consideration. Paul Bongiorno, 10 News.
Victorian Premier Jeff Kennett has rejected an inquiry into allegations of Olympic sabotage and betrayal over Melbourne's failed bid for the 1996 Games. Mr Kennett says he's conducted his own investigation and there's no need for a state probe. But at the same time, he called on the Senate to open a special inquiry into the Australian Olympic movement's financial dealings.
After poring over allegations of sabotage raised over the last fortnight, Mr. Kenneth came to this conclusion.
No substantial information has come to light that would justify Victoria setting up an inquiry into the allegations of sabotage.
The Premier spoke to key players in Melbourne's bid, including former Premiers Joan Kirner and John Cain, who'd called for an independent probe.
No one, including the former Premiers or any other businessman or businesswoman, has been able to respond to my question, have you any hard evidence that would prove up sabotage with any detailed information at all?
Mrs. Kirner would not comment. From Los Angeles, IOC official Kevin Gosper welcomed the Premier's decision, but Australian Olympic Committee officials have reacted angrily to the Premier's call for a separate Senate inquiry into whether its members have misused public funds for personal gain. There have been reports AOC members have invested in casinos and pay consultancy fees on Olympics matters.
Unfortunately, that is a slur on the integrity on the AOC and the people who administer the AOC.
Phil Coles, whose 44 phone calls to Atlanta led to claims he sabotaged Melbourne's bid, is relieved there'll be no inquiry.
Obviously, I've been wounded and it's taken a toll on my family and particularly my 83-year-old mum. But this is not a time for recriminations. It must be a time of reconciliation.
Mr. Kenneth's decision may come as a relief for the Australian Olympic Committee, but it's unlikely to put an end to the doubts, rumours and innuendo which gave rise to calls for an inquiry in the first place. Vic Caruso, 10 News.
Ahead, a royal wedding and a mass exodus of Rwandan refugees fleeing rebel troops.
This morning there was no one here. Now there are 250,000 people and we think there'll be 500,000 by tomorrow. That's 600 every minute.
There's another mass exodus underway in Rwanda. Thousands of refugees fleeing rebel troops are spilling into neighbouring Zaire. The United States has demanded an immediate ceasefire in Rwanda and called for international relief supplies for the refugees who now face possible starvation.
A human tidal wave. In 24 hours, 250,000 people have fled the civil war in Rwanda. Rwandans have been streaming out of the country since the fighting began April 6th, but this may be the biggest exodus. Till now, those on the run were mainly members of the Tutsi tribe. Now it's mostly Hutus who are fleeing, as Tutsi rebels have won control of most of the country. Even Hutu government soldiers are leaving. They and Hutu gangs are blamed for the massacres of an estimated 500,000 Rwandans over the past 3 months. Fear is in the eyes of those crossing the border into Zaire, reinforced by gunfire. Hutu government soldiers were shooting even as they fled. People scampered into ditches to avoid the bullets. The refugees now are swarming Zaire's border town of Goma. Aid workers there were already strapped. Now they're overwhelmed.
Just in one day, the situation is totally catastrophic. This morning there was no one here. Now there are 250,000 people and we think there'll be 500,000 by tomorrow. That's 600 every minute.
The defense minister of Rwanda's rump government flew to Goma for secret talks, as did the commander of UN forces in Rwanda. It is no secret that the government is losing ground and the rebels are closing in, but there is as yet no ceasefire.
In the United States, there's still talk of a possible invasion of the Caribbean island of Haiti. Tonight, the US Senate voted against a bill that would have delayed any invasion for a month. The White House has acknowledged US Marines are conducting training exercises in the Bahamas. A White House spokesperson also says 8 to 10 countries have agreed to join a peacekeeping force once Haiti's leaders step down. However, there's no official word on any invasion plans. A group of Americans have arrived in Moscow to help the locals fight the increasing crime rate. They're the Guardian Angels, whose distinctive red berets and T-shirts came to Australia 2 years ago. While most Australians knew what they represented, Muscovites are not too sure.
For years, they've been trying to fight crime in New York and London. But now, the controversial Guardian Angels say they're needed in Moscow. This was their first patrol on the city's metro, and they believe they're one of the good things the West can give to the Russian people.
We're hoping the positiveness of Guardian Angels will rub off on them, as opposed to what they've seen before us. Terminator, Rambo, Mafia. So we're trying to infuse them with a little bit of the positive of Western values, which is protecting one another instead of hurting one another.
This group of guardian angels, 2 of them British, are trying to recruit up to 50 Russian volunteers, but many Muscovites seem less than enthusiastic. This woman thought the angels were religious missionaries, and these men thought they were a protection racket available for hire. Lenin would no doubt have been appalled by this new Western invasion, but so far the guardian angels have been given a cautious welcome here by the Moscow police, who certainly need all the help they can get. Violent crime has been rampant in Russia since the collapse of communism, but President Yeltsin is using crack troops, not unarmed civilians, to take on the increasingly dangerous mafia gangs.
In the United States, disturbing images from a court in Royal Oak, Michigan. A man accused of shooting a police officer started yelling at the judge. So the judge ordered he be gagged. Court officials carried out the order using gaffer tape when they found masking tape just wasn't strong enough. The American Civil Liberties Union, which monitors injustices in the legal system, is to investigate to see if the judge went too far. The off-again, on-again marriage of TV star Roseanne Arnold is tonight apparently off again. And she's renewed claims husband Tom physically abused her.
They used to share laughs on camera and off, but neither Roseanne nor Tom Arnold is laughing about new demands and renewed allegations in Hollywood's latest high-profile divorce. At stake, millions of dollars in production companies, homes, and material possessions. Wednesday, Tom Arnold filed motions in court requesting support from Roseanne of not less than $100,000 per month. Arnold says he has only limited funds available with no other sources of income. The actor says he is currently unemployed, having been terminated from the Roseanne TV series. Roseanne, meanwhile, in court documents of her own, demands possession of the couple's 2 Brentwood, California estates, 9 vehicles, including a Dodge Viper, Range Rover, and Lincoln limousine, 2 production companies, the sale of cattle owned by the couple with proceeds to be put into a joint account, and the return of Roseanne's Emmy Award, currently on display at the couple's Big Food Diner in Eldon, Iowa. Roseanne's on-again, off-again claims that Tom physically abused her during their marriage are now on again. Roseanne originally made these claims earlier this year, then recanted them. Now, in new court documents, Roseanne details alleged incidents of abuse. Quote, "Throughout our marriage, Tom Arnold hit me, struck me, punched me, twisted my arms and legs, cruelly squeezed me in bear hugs, has thrown objects at me, pinched me, and verbally abused me." The Arnold's case is set for a hearing in court next Wednesday, July 20th.
In London, Prince Charles and Princess Diana have been seen together for the first time since the Prince admitted his adultery. The occasion was a happy one, the marriage of the Prince's cousin, Lady Sarah Armstrong-Jones.
In lifestyle and attitude, she's earned a reputation as the least royal of her family. But today, she looked every inch the part. Her designer gown was a sharp contrast to some of the more unconventional outfits she's worn at other family weddings. Her wish was for the whole event to be as low-key and private as possible. But some 2,000 people had turned out to see her and the rest of the royal family, who were there in force. For the Princess of Wales, this was a rare appearance at an occasion her husband, too, was attending. Pointedly, though, they arrived separately, he with the Queen Mother, avoiding any awkwardness that this was their first public encounter since the Prince admitted being unfaithful to his wife. Very much together were Prince Edward and his girlfriend, Sophie Rhys-Jones, widely tipped to be the next royal bride. After a service lasting barely half an hour, today's bride emerged with her husband, Daniel Chatto. Theirs is already a mature relationship. They've been together for 7 years and known one another for 12. The family's hopes, then, are that this marriage will prove more successful than some that have preceded it.
Ahead in 10 News, getting ready for the Big Bang on Jupiter. And we meet the first Australian to swap a mechanical heart for the real thing.
He's in there. I hope not that some car run me over next year or something. So I think I have a good future.
Drug is set to produce a breakthrough in pain relief for the chronically ill. It's a slow-release morphine capsule. The tiny pellets can provide constant relief for up to 24 hours. Doctors say it is more efficient than the usual intravenous injection, and its side effects are minimal. Most of the world's supply is being made in Adelaide. They'll be available to hospitals next month. Well, the only Australian ever fitted with a computer-driven artificial heart is recovering in Sydney after swapping it for the real thing. Reinhard Hansmeier was kept alive for 4 months with a mechanical heart pump and says he now feels like a new man.
52-year-old Reinhard Hansmeier had a massive heart attack 14 months ago. It destroyed 75% of his heart, and the Central Coast hairdresser was near death.
It was almost destroyed by his heart attack.
He became the first and only Australian to use a computerised heart pump, which has kept him alive since March. It bought him the time he needed to wait for a compatible donor heart. Now he's looking forward to enjoying simple pleasures like sleep-in.
I'm looking real forward to get out and do things, enjoy the beach and go swimming and do it slowly and try to enjoy every day now.
A family history of heart disease and a lifelong smoking habit made Reinhard ill. The cardiologists credit the heart pump for making Reinhard one of the healthiest patients to ever undergo a transplant. But doctors have ruled out using the pump as a means of getting future patients in better shape for their heart transplants.
We're only going to use it on people who are in such severe heart failure that we fear they're going to die before we can do a transplant on them.
This serious and difficult ordeal has not robbed Reinhard of his sense of humour.
I hope not that some car run me over next year or something. So I think I have a good future. I hope so, yeah.
Michelle Stone, 10 News.
We all hope so. In business news, Australian financial markets today saw a wave of buying. Finance editor Helen McCombie reports local activity is being driven by offshore sentiment.
There was a newfound confidence on our financial markets today, with rallies in both shares and bonds. Much of it inspired by improved sentiment from the United States, where lower than expected retail sales figures, combined with the latest inflation data, alleviated fears about another interest rate rise.
I think the change can best be described as fragile. I think it's still quite sensitive to anything that may happen. And of course, all eyes will next week be on Greenspan, the head of the Fed, as he describes the economy to Congress. And people will be looking for signs as to what's happening with interest rates there from his speech.
Our stock market also saw a second burst of diamond fever after Cambridge Golf announced it had found a significant number of macro diamonds in Joseph Bonaparte Golf. Macro diamonds are 0.3 millimetres and above. 6 stones found so far. The largest has a weight of about 2 carats. And in Canada, one of the owners of the 10 network, CanWest, has had a big jump in profits. They're up more than 60% for the 9 months to the end of May. Both 10 in Australia and TV3 in New Zealand contributed significantly to CanWest's improved result. Looking at where the share market ended, the All Ords jumped 50 points, or 2.5%. The biggest one-day rise since the end of January. Blue chips like BHP, CRA, News Corp and the ANZ were the star performers. That's the latest in business news.
And the Aussie dollar tonight is on 73.70 US cents, 47.30 pence and 72.32 yen. Gold is stronger at $385.25 and the FT100 is up 16 points. The Hang Seng closed up 309 and the Nikkei rose 52. Still to come in 10 News, the weather, a very special plane and Matt White.
Featuring in sports tonight, Carlton or Collingwood, the latest AFL moves. Trying to catch up with Rugby League's Phil Gould, Tom Raudonikis and Jared McCracken. And live to Perth for the Battle of the Cats.
Past Fisher. Great move. Sensational Adrian Branch.